thus, what we've proven so far is that they cannot be popes because they're manifest heretics, and that the official teaching of this sect is diametrically opposed to the official teaching of the true popes throughout history. How much time do we have there?
You've got about 30 seconds.
Okay, maybe we'll just stop there.
Okay, the next round of debate is the first rebuttal. It'll be 15 minutes for each side, beginning with Mr. Goley.
Yeah, the Diamond Brothers have done exactly what I knew they would do. They've cited, obviously they've had 50 years, roughly 50 years of 5 popes, and it's obvious that they can quote a lot of passages. But I cannot address in 15 minutes each and every single solitary passage. That would be crazy. But I think if you go back and you look at each single thing they quoted, you can explain each quote. It's been done. Like I said, I have 40 pages here from different websites that have taken on the Diamond Brothers point by point on these quotes that they're giving you. Again, they're interpreting these documents to mean that these individuals are heretics. I'm saying that it's impossible for their position to be correct. If their position is correct, we have no more hierarchy in the church. You're left with one conclusion. Either the Diamond Brothers' interpretation of all these papal quotes over almost 50 years are correct, or other Catholic theologians that have talked about this and have said, no, the popes don't mean this in the heretical way. I mean, in 1981, John Paul II reaffirmed in a speech in France, no salvation outside the church. He said it's a truth that that the church must uphold. Cardinal Ratzinger, when he was not the Pope, when John Paul II was the Pope, reaffirmed no salvation outside the church. And Domini Jesus may not interpret it in the Feeneyite sense the way the Diamond Brothers do, which I believe is wrong, but that's a whole other issue, okay? And to say that these popes don't believe in the resurrection or believe that all men are God, I mean, it's not correct. It is incorrect. You have quote after quote from these guys that would say the opposite of what the Diamond Brothers are saying. And to say that, now, am I advocating necessarily everything these popes have done? No, I'm not. I don't want to get into criticism of them, but I do not. But that's not heresy. That's not apostasy. They're taking one quote and stretching it. Go back, look at the quotes. Do them one by one. It's impossible to do that here in 15 minutes. As far as the private revelation goes, the church has never held that every single solitary thing in a private revelation that has been reported, even if it is approved, is necessarily factual. And also, you can interpret some of those private revelations as being absolutely correct, even in the post-conciliar church. The church definitely is in crisis. There definitely has been a great falling away. There definitely are priests and bishops that do not follow the Catholic faith. But that doesn't mean the conclusions that the Diamond Brothers are bringing forth. They need to deal with directly Vatican I's teaching that the papacy will be there till the end of time, in perpetuity. If they can't deal with that, their interpretations cannot be correct. I don't have to go down and refute everything that they said, okay? It would be impossible. They have 50 years to quote documents. And incidentally, believe me, do a Google search. Do a Google search on Benedict XVI, John the 23rd, John Paul II. You'll see they said no salvation outside the church. You'll see that they believed in the resurrection. You'll see that they didn't believe that every man is God. That's ludicrous. They're taking those quotes out of context. just like the Arians did in John 14, the Father is greater than I, just like Martin Luther did in Romans chapter 3, verse 28, when he said that man is justified by faith apart from works of the law. How do we know that? Because if Luther was correct, then we know that the teaching of the church, that Christ's promise went down the tubes. Same with the diamonds. We know they're not correct because if it's true what they say, then Vatican I is wrong, that we have no hierarchy, we have no legitimate bishops with jurisdiction. Since we haven't had a pope in 50 years, they get the jurisdiction from the Holy Father. We don't have a college of cardinals because Pius XII, the last pope, there are no more cardinals alive that he appointed or made cardinal. So we know their interpretations of these documents cannot be correct. Then we have the whole situation with Sister Lucia, where they have to stretch that. That's another stretch, just like their documents here. It's insane to draw some of the conclusions that these two men are drawing. Anyone can sit there and quote passages and draw conclusions from those passages and say this person's a manifest heretic. And I may not be able to explain every single one. I believe I can explain a darn good many that they're not heresy. But I don't necessarily have to, in a sense, because if their conclusions are correct, then we don't have a church. So I know their conclusions cannot be correct. And that's the point they're going to have to deal with today. I'm not going to let them off the hook. I'm going to pound home the fact that in their church, the church that they purport, they're going to have to account for how the next pope's elected, how the faithful's going to know he's elected, who is going to elect him, and why hasn't it been done? Why hasn't it been done? If Peter has successors in perpetuity for 47 years, we haven't had a pope. We're going on half a century. That's unprecedented in church history. Number one, I don't believe we've gone this long without a Holy Father, okay? And number two, we've never had a situation where the church has set up the rules to elect another pope, and then all those rules can't happen anymore because everyone's dead. It hasn't happened. And they're going to have to deal with that. So who's correct? If the Diamond Brothers are correct, if their conclusions are right with all these quotes that they're saying, that say these guys are heretics, then the church really has ceased to exist because there is no hierarchy, there is no bishop with jurisdiction, there is no college of cardinals to elect a pope. So we got a major problem here, and the Diamonds need to explain that. Is it possible they could be wrong about their interpretations of these popes? Absolutely it is. Was Luther wrong? Was Calvin wrong when he used Romans chapter 9 to assert double predestination? Did they think they were right? Absolutely. Were the Arians wrong? Yes. And they quoted passages such as this. I believe that, let's see. Again, the scriptural verses about the Antichrist being in Rome, I mean, that certainly could be true, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to occupy the papacy. I mean, I'm sure we can get in a whole exegetical argument from these passages, but again, I do not believe in any way whatsoever that you can quote 100 things from 50 years, draw the conclusion that these guys are heretics, when you have to admit that if you put as much effort into finding the heresy, that you could also find just as many orthodox statements. And again, here we have two individuals and other individuals that represent probably less than 1% of the Catholic population, 0.006%, and they're interpreting these documents on their own, and they're deposing the Pope. Really, the burden of proof is on them to show where the Church has taught that a private individual can depose a Pope.